What if I told you that slavery never really ended? It just changed its form. That it is still going on, but most of the people don't even notice it? Today, there are more slaves than ever before, but the difference is they think they're free. During the mid-1800s, Karl Marx came up with an idea that completely changed how people understood society. He believed that workers weren't just a part of the system, they were the system. They built everything, created real value, and kept the world running. The rich, according to Marx, didn't actually produce anything. They just moved value around, like middlemen taking credit for someone else's work. For example, if a worker makes shoes worth $100 and a company sells them for $150, the worker creates the real value, $100 worth of shoes. But the capitalist, the owner, keeps the profit. He argued that if workers were treated fairly, paid properly, and given respect, society would naturally stay stable. Because when the foundation is strong, everything built on top of it stands firm. After World War II ended in 1945, capitalist countries like the US, UK, and many in Europe started adopting Marx-inspired ideas, even though they didn't call them communism. They built what's known as social democracies, a mix of capitalism and socialism. This meant that workers' rights were protected, and they were treated fairly and paid properly for their work. Governments introduced affordable public health care and education so that regular people could live better lives. The middle class began to rise during this time, especially throughout the 1950s to the late 1970s. They weren't rich, but they lived comfortably. They could afford homes, raise families, and have a stable life without constant financial stress. Society started focusing more on the worker, and people finally began to feel secure about their future. But then, during the 1980s, the rich got pissed off. They didn't like how equal things were starting to feel, so they wanted to take back control. Ronald Reagan, who was the 40th president of the United States from 1981 to 1989, and Margaret Thatcher, who was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1979 to 1990, both pushed a new system called neoliberalism. This system focused on the idea of the free market, meaning the government should stop controlling things like prices, wages, or industries, and just let businesses compete on their own. For example, if the government used to control gas prices or rent, now they'd say, let the market decide. Then came privatization, which meant selling government-owned companies and services to private businesses. For instance, trains, electricity, and even public housing that were once owned by the government were sold off to private investors so they could make profit from them. The third piece was deregulation, which meant removing government rules that limited what companies could do. For example, banks used to have strict rules about what risks they could take with people's money. But those rules were loosened or removed. It made it easier for companies to grow fast, but it also gave them more power and less accountability. All of this shifted the focus of society away from the worker and back to money, and to the people who already had a lot of it. This meant that the rich would keep getting richer, while ordinary people would slowly fall behind. Back then, in the 1970s, a company's CEO used to earn around 20 times the wage of an average worker. But by the 2000s, that number had exploded. Now, they make over 200 times more. The elites wanted to weaken the workers, but they couldn't just do that by cutting their wages. That would have caused anger and protests. So instead, they did something smarter. They changed the worker's identity. They replaced the idea of the worker with the consumer. In the past, the government promised people a good, stable job. But in the 1980s, that promise changed. The new message became, you'll have low prices and endless choices. It sounds nice, right? But that small change completely reshaped society. Because when you're a worker, you unite with others to demand fair treatment. But when you're a consumer, you compete with others to buy more. For example, if everyone in school suddenly got $1 million, at first everyone would be happy. But soon, people would start competing. who has the bigger house, the nicer car, or the better phone. They'd buy more, show off more, and even go into debt just to keep up. And before long, everyone would be jealous and in competition. That's consumerism, a system that keeps people busy, distracted, and constantly chasing more without ever feeling satisfied. And if you think about it, it's not really new. Back then, during slavery, people were controlled by masters. They were given food and a place to live, but they had no freedom. Today, it's similar, just more hidden. You work all your life for money to buy food and pay rent, or a mortgage for a home that isn't truly yours. It feels like freedom because you're choosing what to buy, but the system still owns your time. The elites realized people wouldn't accept obvious slavery anymore, so they made a version that feels comfortable. They keep everyone just happy enough money to survive, maybe save a little, and believe they're free. But by the time most people finally save enough to buy something meaningful, life has already passed them by. And when you really think about it, is that freedom? Or is it just a more polite version of the same old slavery? After that shift, people slowly started seeing life through money. Everything became a calculation. Every decision had a price tag attached to it. Education stopped being about learning. It turned into a competition to get the highest paying job. People didn't ask, "What do I want to learn?" They asked, "What will make me more money?" Even relationships started to change. People began to judge each other by income, lifestyle, or what they post online. It's no longer about who someone really is. It's about what they have. You see it everywhere. People showing off cars, watches, vacations, trying to look richer or more successful than they actually are. That's what happens when a society runs on economic logic, when the value of everything, even love or friendship, is measured in dollars and status. I won't say life was better in the old days, but at least people back then knew they were slaves. They could see their chains, and that means they could fight back or dream of freedom. But today, people don't even realize they're slaves, so they don't try to change anything. They feel comfortable in their chains, debt, brands, and social media validation. Back then, there were masters, but now the master is the system itself. It's built in a way that controls everyone, not by force, but by design. You don't need someone to tell you what to do anymore. The system already knows how to keep you in line like sheep, through money, comfort, and the illusion of choice. This system is the perfection of slavery. Francis Fukuyama, an American political scientist and philosopher, called this system the end of history. He said that after the Cold War, when communism collapsed and capitalism became dominant, humanity had basically reached its final stage. There would be no more revolutions, no new systems, because people are too distracted, too comfortable, and too trapped inside consumer life to even think about real change. Back then, revolutions happened because people felt the pain of inequality directly. They were hungry, desperate, and angry enough to stand up and fight against injustice. But today, most people are comfortable slaves, so they don't care. They have just enough money, entertainment, and distractions to stay quiet. So the elites win while people like us keep shopping. And in a hidden way, Marx's prediction came true. The system evolved exactly how he warned it would. The problem is, we think freedom means having choices. But what if those choices are actually traps? It looks like we have hundreds of options, different brands, companies, or products. But behind the scenes, a small number of giant corporations actually own or control most of them. It feels like freedom, but it's not. It's like being trapped in a room full of traps. You get to choose which one catches you. That's the illusion of freedom. The worker fought for rights, the consumer fought for discounts. And that's the difference. One was fighting for change. The other was just trying to save a few dollars inside the same system. You've just seen how deep this really goes. And this is just the surface. Most people never question these things, but you're already ahead just by understanding how the system works. There's a lot more like this that'll change the way you see the world, and that's what this channel is about. connecting the dots nobody talks about. So stay curious, stay awake, and hit subscribe. Not for me, but for yourself.